All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Herrick Chapel. My name is Ann Harris. I have the honor of serving as the 14th president of Grinnell and the joy of being in community with you until around 9:45 when the rain may or may not come. It's just going to be that Iowa day. So I want to say a wonderful good morning to those of you joining online through our live stream. I'm hoping if you're in town, you're just having a cozy cup of coffee with your child, wherever you are, or if you're far away, that you know we hold you close this particular weekend. So we've got this opportunity that I welcome so very much to be together. I'd like to share some things that are happening at the college with you for about 20, 25 minutes, but then my actual favorite part of this is questions from you. And we can be in conversation, and then afterwards, the conversation continues for as long as your child is here, and then well beyond as well. I want to do a quick shout out to any siblings in the audience. I see two. You guys are awesome people for coming for your siblings' family weekend. That takes a lot. And I say this with very warm thoughts for all those processes, right? When you do campus visits, and then there'll be graduation before you know it, and so forth. So welcome to your siblings as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into a bit of our time together. Of course, my goal is also that you come to know me better, that you know that my team and I are here for you, that we are here for our students, that we form a really important community together. And I've been walking in community in higher education for, oh my goodness, I think over 25 years now. I started as a faculty member. I actually used to teach medieval art history. So even though that lucrative field, like being at a pulpit is a little odd, it's like every medievalist dream, right? Is to be in this kind of beautiful space. And I do want to acknowledge Herrick Chapel is a very special place at Grinnell. It's been here a good long time. It is where we gather in deeply meaningful ways. It's where I stood in spring of 2020 and told the students that after spring break they would not be able to come back because the pandemic was truly coming. And so every time we regather in this space, it means a lot to me. It's just really fantastic when we can claim our community and celebrate our community. I'm joined this morning by lots of incredible team members, but I really want to celebrate our new dean, Ruth Feingold, who's here in the front row. She's here. And welcome, Ruth. And then my incredible partner, who, by the way, a dean of the college, so that means your student's entire academic experience. She creates the conditions of possibility for that with incredible wisdom and enthusiasm for our shared endeavor. I'm also joined by Myrna Hernandez, Chief of Staff, VP of Administration. Great. And literally, we just have an open door between our two offices, so we talk lots and lots back and forth. And then I see in the back J.C. Lopez, VP of Student Affairs, and Ben Newhouse, Dean of Students. Welcome to them. And then Michael Sims, who really has been making things happen for students at Grinnell for 29 years. And those are those social well-being and the gatherings and so forth. So my last thank you is to you, Michael. Thank you so much. Great. I do a reading group with our students, faculty, and staff. Anybody can come. And it's called Cover to Cover. It's in honor of the Iowa Public Radio show River to River. And this year, we're reading the book, Keep Calm and Call the Dean of Students. So if you see a little halo around Ben Newhouse, that is why. So I come to you as a president, as somebody who deeply, deeply believes in liberal arts education, specifically in the interactiveness of it and the interdisciplinarity of it. I also come to you as a parent. So Mac McKenzie and I are the parents of 3 children, and Mac is actually at the parents' weekend of one of our kids at the College of Worcester. So we're having a lot of good parallel moments. But Mac teaches in the art history department. He's a modernist, I'm a medievalist, somehow it works out. It's been working out pretty well. But we have 3 children. Our wonderful Oliver is in Chicago, having graduated from Macalester, and he is doing what I would now call, I think, kind of gig economy in the publishing world, and he's deeply fulfilled. Our wonderful Iris is at the Ohio State University. I have seen a t-shirt that just says an Ohio State University, which I love, but that may be her Christmas present. Anyway, Iris at the Ohio State University. She's applying for veterinary graduate programs, and then our wonderful Roman at the College of Worcester, who is going into his second year, and he is going to office hours, and he goes to departmental barbecues, and it's kind of the dream as he connects. So just to know who's in the room, how many of you are parents of fourth-year students? Ooh, so there's the wisdom in the room here. You've walked it all, and the next time we'll be across that stage. And third-year parents. Okay, so that's that. Interesting. Many students are off campus in their third year as well. Second-year parents? Wonderful. And this is really good for you all to connect with each other. And then first-year parents. So welcome, 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 welcome. I'm so thrilled you're here. I'm so very glad you're here. You got lots of occasions to come to campus, and of course, I just love how many of you have already started. Somebody even just walking in talked about visiting classes. I know Grinnell Singers were last night. We've got the symphony this afternoon and so forth. I want to start out my remarks by saying, and I think it's worthwhile to say out loud to each other, your students are incredibly brave people. It takes a lot to be a young person today in the liminal space of a higher education between two worlds, right? Leaving home and then about to enter this world, very much connected to it through our alumni and our research and so forth. I also I know you know, but again, it bears saying out loud, they are brilliant. They are really brilliant people. I don't just say smart, intelligent. They have a light. And when they come together in these classrooms, in these residence halls, in the dining hall, I mean, when that place is full, it's absolutely electric, right? The way they talk across their experiences, the way that they are coming from all 50 states, they're coming from, at this point, I think it's 64 countries. Imagine that, right? Every day when you're walking on this campus, you've got that opportunity for brilliance, for that light. And I want to say that they are beautiful. They are genuinely beautiful people. It doesn't mean that we're a utopia, right? We're here to figure out how to disagree. We're here to figure out how to think differently. We're here to figure out how to change our minds or convince others to do so. But when I say they're beautiful, I mean their care for each other as well, the way they reach out to each other. I see that over and over again, as do the colleagues. So my remarks are really focused on them and on the conditions of possibility. I really like that phrase that we create for them. But I wanted to shed some light on how we're living through this moment. What does it mean to be in Grinnell, Iowa, with everything that's happening around us? And this is a global framework within which, of course, we operate at Grinnell. I often say we are a wonderful global college in a rural setting with a national voice. So that continues. So I've got, I think, 3 things. Oh, I had all the way to 4. Good for me. All right, so I've got 4 things to discuss with you, and I'm going to say these and not go into too much detail because I just need to know what's interesting to you, and then I can delve more deeply. But all of this comes from really weeks and weeks of, and months, really, of thinking about our particular moment. So the first thing is that we are grounded in our mission and values. No surprise, but again, you can't skip that part. Right? We've really had to think about these values that were deeply embedded as of 1846 to serve the common good. And we've had to ask ourselves what that means in different periods of history. You add to that these values of that were articulated about 20, I think at this point it's almost 30 years ago. And you see them on our website, and I would say, have those in your heart when you think about, what is my student doing right now studying physics? What is my student doing right now studying political science? Or let's say art history. So academic excellence is the first one. And think about everything it takes to get that going, right? So that's not just the phenomenal faculty that we have. It's their partnership with your student. It's the advising that they do. It's that intellectual curiosity and all the places that it goes. The second is diverse community. And that's been a challenge with a lot of the DEI challenges that we have in our current political and legislative discourse, to understand what that means, to think about, and we've done a lot of legal work. I took a whole team to a law and higher education conference, and really figuring out what is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what has been cited as illegal DEI, how do we preserve that value of a diverse community, Grinnell is not Grinnell without students from all over the country. Grinnell is not Grinnell without international students. And we've had to do some work to preserve that part of our values. And then third, of course, is our wonderful value of social responsibility. I think that's the modern translation of the common good. And I will say I've seen some changes. There's, I will always defend the right to protest, the right to speak out, and I'll have some thoughts to say about free speech in just a minute. But I also think I'm seeing more process-oriented activism, if I can call it that. Please make yourselves comfortable. You're so, so warmly welcome. There's plenty of room in the front row. That's not unusual, but just come on over. So when we think about social responsibility, we've got several different scales we're operating on. Have you heard this term hyperlocal? I'm hearing that more and more. I see nodding heads more and more from our students. I'm going to be hyperlocal. So sometimes social responsibility is to one's neighbor. That can be somebody in your residence hall. That can be somebody down the street. And I'll talk more about Renfro Hall, which is downtown. It's across one street, but it's downtown in Grinnell. It's our magnificent residence hall for our students. And then sometimes social responsibility can be cancer research and going on and really producing research that will change people's lives. I'm proud to tell you that we have a professor in neuroscience, Clark Lindgren, who was just awarded a $500,000 grant from the NIH, when those are relatively rare right now. And he always works with students, all of our faculty do. So we're grounded in our mission, we're grounded in our values, and we're grounded in place. And I think this is important. Being grounded in place doesn't mean you have to, love every single thing. There will be plenty of cold days when it's like, why did I come to college in Iowa? It doesn't mean necessarily even being an Iowa booster, right? It means being grounded in place, knowing what's here, knowing who came before us. And I spent a good deal of time this summer thinking, okay, what do I really know about Iowa, actually? Right? So I read a great deal about the history, and how do we use that as the wellspring to replenish ourselves for whatever work is happening? This is an interesting state. Third in the nation for marriage equality, first in the nation to rescind civil protections for gender identity. There's a lot happening here. And then if you follow the news, we've got an incredibly open political field as well. Governor, senator, all sorts of things are happening. So we're part of this community. We're a voice in the state. We've got good friends all over, and I can say across the aisle and so forth. But what does it mean when we've got the kinds of things that are happening here and how they impact our students as well? So the one thing I want to leave you, I've got lots of Iowa history tidbits if you've got curiosity about that. But I do want to leave you with what's on our flag in this state. Our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain. That is on the flag. The flag is based on the French flag because of all the early movements and trade that were happening up and down the Mississippi. Then you've got this kind of screaming eagle in the middle. It's very dramatic. And then you've got a scroll. Our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain. It was designed in 1917 for Iowa soldiers to recognize each other on the fields of World War I. And it became the state flag in 1921. So we've got this being grounded in place. What does it mean what does it mean that that's our flag? What does it mean in our actions to each other? And I can go into that into more detail. The second quality that I'm using a lot to replenish our resolve for our work here to keep our mission going is to acknowledge multiplicity and simultaneity. That's really important. I mean, when you think about your wondrous child, know that in any given day, they will be hearing one of our 75 languages spoken on campus. They will be meeting someone from another state. Nobody comes here in huge cliques from their high schools, right? You know this, parents who have been here for second, third, fourth years. So to think about that multiplicity, I think, is really important. I'll give you an example. Last year, we did a whole bunch of election tables, and students would speak about elections in their home state or in their home country. So I now know more about the Bulgarian parliament than I ever thought that I would, and I'm happy to discuss it further. But our international students, that's 20% of our student body, they've really blurred. It's not black and white here. It's not red and blue, right? They've really blurred political discourse so that, and blurred in a really good way, complicated it, so that we can think about a long line, a long spectrum from politics to civics and back again. And that's in the ether around here. Even if you see some of the posters for all the different groups that are here on campus and so on and so forth. So I think that's something you bump into every single day at Grinnell. So we acknowledge our students' multiplicity and the simultaneity that it brings. And simultaneity is really important when you're a parent, because you can talk to your child at 10 a.m. and they are having the worst day ever, and by 4 p.m. they've turned it around for themselves, or somebody has been there for them to help them do so. Other way around happens too, right? You can get that early morning text, and then by the evening it's like, I don't know, physics, I don't know, right? And so walking with them in that simultaneity, that they're gonna have these things compressed in the same day. They're gonna feel ecstatic and dance under the prairie sky, and they're also gonna be hunkered down in noise in the science library, working really hard. That simultaneity, I think, is, and I say this with all of the student affairs professionals in the room, that is happening a great deal. J.C. Lopez has put out there, I think, something that's been very helpful to a lot of parents, this W pattern, right? This W curve. You start out, college is awesome, then you get homesick, and we walk our pug around at night, and I can tell you a lot of your students miss their dogs, right? So our pug gets a lot of pets as a result, but I think that's an important role that she plays. Then you peak back up, I've got this, it's going well. Then you've got midterms, oh, it's really hard, what am I? And then they find their pace. They find their stride, and you've got a lot of people here to help them do it, but they're doing it. That's what I mean about the bravery as well. So keep that kind of simultaneity, I think, in mind. Also the fact that, the student that you see on the football field is also an art major or an econ art double major. It was one of my favorite football players to behold. And I think we've got a lot to learn from our children's capacity for joy, and I'm seeing more of this. Joy as resistance. It is heavy to read the news. It is really heavy. And when I hear about so there's a thing called Harris Hall, and there are Harris parties. It has nothing to do with me. It's just named Harris for another Harris entirely. But there are Harris parties, Disco Harris, they call it all different things, reggaeton Harris, and so forth. Those moments are not just moments of forgetting the world. I think they're moments of replenishment for the world. That's another thing that I say about our students being beautiful. Now, the third thing, this is a real commitment from all of us on the senior leadership team, is educate and de-escalate, okay? And those things happen together. This is for any of the heavy issues that are out there. And again, I'm looking at this from my perspective. I think this can happen on any number of scales. It can happen in a roommate disagreement. It can happen in a particular trying to understand what another group of students or faculty or staff are doing. It can happen in our relationship with the community, but we educate each other, and that I do find has de-escalated. Another way to look at it is you're constantly moving from protest to process in different issues and so forth. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. This is the sustained work of multiple partners, and of course we're an educational institution. That's going to be our approach. Right? If I write something, and you can always look on my webpage for messages to the community, you'll see that there's always something to learn, right? Sometimes something that I didn't know and I need to put forward. So with that, I want to acknowledge that the pace of education is very different than the pace of social media. Right? Those are two very different things. We have the privilege of being in a community where we can reach out to each other, walk over to each other's offices, come over to each other's residence halls. Students, they know they can walk into Nolan House where I am at any time. And I say this with great emphasis. And this is something that makes me both protective and admiring of our students. There is no grace for young people in the age of social media. There is so little grace. I'm going to say no grace for young people in the age of social media. And I'm watching our students, and I'm walking with our students, and we all are. Whenever I say I, it's really a whole bunch of us, right? Trying to understand, and international students, now their social media is examined, right, when it comes times for visas and things like that. And other students are starting to think about that place. But also, how do you express yourself? Do you go right away to the phone, or do you go ahead and go down the hall? So those are really, really important things. Want to emphasize that academic freedom and free inquiry are at the core of our mission, and they're crucial to our mission. And I emphasize that phrase, community of inquiry. This is the marvelous John Dewey, who said, democracy is reborn with each generation, and education is its midwife. Interesting metaphor. But community of inquiry is really key. So we have a simple enough adage when it comes to free speech. We can talk about this more. Free speech, your free speech ends where my civil rights begin. Your free speech ends where my civil rights begin. And that's us balancing the First Amendment with Title VI, which seeks to prohibit discrimination based on race, I'm using the language, race, origin, color, or shared ancestry, which includes religious identity. And this makes it a really vital time, I think, to be in an educational community, just to think about that. Your free speech ends where my civil rights begin. And then it's also, I've heard students say, yeah, what you're saying is be decent to each other. I'm like, yes, you're exactly right. And then wrapping up here, so research, deliberation, and collaboration are things that are also fundamental to the academic mode of being, right? Researching something, deliberating it, and then collaborating on that deliberation or the outcomes of that deliberation. I also put it to you that that's a civic mode. That's how we approach living in this community and sending our students out into the world. My hope for your students, for all Grinnellians, is that they know how to create community and they know how to make positive change. So research, deliberation, and collaboration really have to come forward. And now we have this embodiment in Renfro Hall, downtown, again, across 6th Avenue, but named for Mrs. Edith Renfro Smith, as I hope many of you know, who was the first Black alumna of Grinnell College, graduating in 1937, and celebrating her 111th birthday this summer, which she claimed in a video to the community was her best yet. I love her. I love her so much. And she inspires our students, and I want you to know of our efforts to have your students live in the light of the legacy of our alumni. We don't do a whole lot of traditions at Grinnell, and I love that spirit, actually. Like, we're always reinventing and rethinking, but that doesn't prevent us from grounding ourselves in the people who were here before us. So Mrs. Renfro Smith is a very, very big part of that. And now on the south side, you've got the Weingart Civic Innovation Pavilion. And this is where campus and community gather to take on any issues of collaboration. It can be rural mental health, it can be the Build a Better Grinnell working group, it can be how we're gonna do the next quilt show. The idea is that we've created a third space for college and community to come together. And for reasons that would take days and days, but I would love to do it, higher education, that ivory tower idea, higher education has been at a geographical remove from their communities, right? Especially small liberal arts colleges. So there's only a couple of colleges that do this kind of work out in the community. So I've been very proud of that. And after that, I think, just to let you know the issues we're working on, we're always following, of course, the legislation and how it impacts higher education. We had a very good outcome with the endowment tax, and I'm looking at Myrna, who had a Hill Day. I had a Hill Day over in Washington, D.C. We really advocated for small liberal arts colleges to not be taxed on their endowments. We had been paying a 1.4% tax. There was talk of moving to 21%, which would have been $30 million a year out of our endowment. And in the end, and I was not in the room where it happened, I was in plenty of rooms. DC lives in 15-minute increments. So one time we got 45 minutes with Senator Grassley's tax expert. That was an awesome moment. But we really advocated for our financial model, for what we do with our financial aid. 68% of the endowment draw goes to financial aid. It's $80 million of financial aid this year, and the importance of our diverse community in so many ways. In the end, like I said, I wasn't in the room where it happened, but we are paying no tax. And as was said to me by a higher ed leader in the state, and nobody ever pays less taxes, but we actually are, and we're of course going to be making good on that and paying it forward. We're thinking a great deal about, and these are now the specific issues. So artificial intelligence, yes, we're doing a lot of work on it. We've competitively part of a group that has joined the AACNU Institute on AI, Pedagogy, and the Curriculum. I'll have more things to say if you've got questions about that. We're also, of course, very focused on, we continue to grow our career life and services to connect your students with internships, externships, off-campus study, community engagement, and of course, research. They do a lot of all of those things. And then we've been growing our philanthropy, and that to me is the vitality of our beautiful community. Our alums coming to stand with your students, more and more people talking about why they give, and I think that's that's a marvelous, marvelous thing. I give in honor of my father, who was a first-generation college student coming out of World War II with the GI Bill. So here is where I want to end, is on this idea of love. Philanthropy from the Greek is just loving people, right? And a lot of that happens at Grinnell. And when I say love, I don't just mean rainbows, unicorns, utopia, easy things. I mean love is being there for each other when things are complicated or they're hard. I hope I've given you a little bit of a sense of how we're doing that, at least the principles on which we're doing that. And now I want to open it up for your questions. My fervent hope for you, and I say this to everyone who sits in Herrick Chapel because I really feel it here, is that Grinnell be a wellspring for you, for your family, for your children, for your students who are here. And wellspring is one of those fantastic old English words that it replenishes you. That when you come here, you feel replenished for whatever joy or challenge awaits you. Our students do that for us just by being here, by being brave and brilliant and beautiful. And I'm so grateful to you for being here this weekend and in this particular moment. My dear colleagues have microphones. Let's have a conversation. Thank you very much. And no question is too big or too small. We always talk about the dining hall at one point or another in these times, so I'm totally fine with that. We can go to AI, the meaning of life, all of it. Yes?
This is about housing.
Great.
I have a second year and a fourth year, and my fourth year is living off campus this year, and he actually is loving that experience, kind of a little step away from, I mean, he's a block away from campus, but he just says he loves feeling that he's not, it's just a nice getaway. It's my understanding that it might not be possible for students, or as many students, to live off campus.
Sure.
And that a lot of renters, people that own homes, are having to sell their homes because so do you know what's happening with that?
I'll get started on it, and then I'll turn it over to JC. But first of all, I love that both of your children are having these experiences here. Your older child's commute is not so bad, right? I do love a small town. Chicago is a challenge now. I tell you what, I've lived here long enough. But you're absolutely right. We have, JC will give you the exact numbers, but 150, 200 students maybe. Maybe it's not that high anymore, because we've had swings back and forth, students who want to live on campus, and then some years, let's get a house together and so on. We are, you're exactly right, deeply connected to the local economy. And we think about that a good deal. So basically what happens process-wise is that JC's team will set a certain number, and then the students apply to live off campus, or they apply to live anywhere. They also apply to live in Renfro Hall, which is also, quote, out in town. And then it's a matter of meeting once the number is set, students will say, okay, it's only 150 or it's only 100 this time, I'm going to put in for campus. Or they'll say, oh, there's a larger number. So JC, if you want to talk a little bit more about the process, but you're exactly right, we are absolutely beholden to our local economy in many, many ways.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. And I think being a four-year residential experience as well, we do have an opportunity to provide different opportunities for students to live on campus, right? We do have an opportunity for students to also live off campus. The application process will actually open October 1st, so students will be instructed on what they should submit in their application, and then the process will continue. So there is a limited amount of space. It changes year to year based on flexibility. But yes, it is kind of a collaboration, not just with us, but other departments, other areas, and then with our local community as well. So. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, and by the time they're done, students can have lived in so many different kinds of settings, because if they study off campus, for example, they'll have a very different living experience. We have apartments, the Cohen apartments, on campus, off campus, and so forth. So, yeah. And there are three distinct places. This is for first-year parents, but North Campus, South Campus, East Campus, they each have a different, if I can use the parlance of our age, vibe. And students will make a point of living in those three different places as well.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say that because we are four-year residency requirement, really the number that we release is based on our on-campus housing occupancy, and then bringing Luce Hall back online this year after the renovation, bringing Renfro Hall does expand our occupancy, and so that does mean a reduction in the number of students who we release, and that is truly driven because we value the on-campus residential experience. We also know that students value that, and so we tried to manage students' expectations last year to say, if you're a junior, and in the past that was something that was possible, it's likely not going to be possible just based on our historical numbers. It's most likely going to be seniors are going to be the ones that get the opportunity to be released. And so that's that's how it's driven from year to year. So it does flux a little bit based on what our off-campus study numbers look like. So that's why it's but it's usually typically now right about 150. And so what I will say is I can't speak to what our current existing landlords are going through. I do know that rental houses for our faculty, staff, and students are always tight. They're always looking for some. So I think there may be something else going on there if some of our landlords are deciding to sell their houses, because every year we have new faculty that are arriving and trying to find local housing. That's been a real crunch for so many of our new arrivals to the Grinnell community.
And we've got new apartments going up behind McNally's. That's that big hole you see in the ground. Underground parking seems so urban. It makes me so happy. And our financial aid, if a student is on financial aid for room and board, does carry over to living out in town as well. So great admiration for what it takes to put a community together. Great question. Yes, down here.
Thank you. As a chair of Associated College for Midwest, how do you see future of for Grinnell influencing the entire collaboration, and especially in context of the liberal arts education? You've got a very important role to play. I must thank you for that.
So how I'm seeing Grinnell College play in what kind of collaboration? In
influencing the liberal arts education's future. You got to attend pretty, especially essentially through collaboration.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a rich question. Thank you so much for that. Okay. I think, of course, I love to think in threes. So I do think the first is you always want to get the value proposition out there, because we are 3% of the higher education market, small liberal arts colleges, right? We were the originators, 1687, et cetera. We were the first ones here, but ever since land grant institutions, and then you've got your R1s, your regional publics, your community colleges, and so forth, 3%. So how do you speak from that place of experience? So I think when I say, you deepen the value proposition, we need to constantly, and we do, celebrate the leadership that comes out of Grinnell College. And what I mean by that are anything from our alums who argue in front of the Supreme Court, as Chase Strangio did in December of 2024, and others have before him. We talk about the kind of life-saving research that our faculty are involved in and so forth. So I do think some of it is you got to shine the light, because as 3% of the higher ed market, we're not self-evident the way that Harvard, I would still call self-evident, right? The other, and truly, I will say this, announcing ourselves as Grinnellians is really important. Saying I went to Grinnell College. Oh, and I can't tell you how many times if I'm wearing a Grinnell sweatshirt in Washington, D.C., I had a graduate clerk for me, or I had somebody work for me. They were fantastic. So I think you can't ever stop doing that. The second thing is to get ourselves out there in new ways. So we haven't released it yet. I think I don't know that it's embargoed, but it's still in process of being announced. But we've just received a pretty important grant that creates pathways for small liberal arts professors and staff members to create patents and to get more connected to the industrial and commercial sector. And that's really important, because sometimes liberal arts get seen as you go away far from the madding crowd, you go away from civilization and think for 4 years, and then you come back. This creates a pathway that hasn't been there before, and that's something that's been very, very important to me, is that community engagement, doing it locally. But now with this grant, and my goodness, Susan Ferrari, our grant director, and the way that she partners with other people, that's really important. So that, I think, is going to change the knowledge into action aspect of our classroom practice and our research practice to something very real, something that is well exercised with Stanford and Harvard and all the R1s. But I'm really glad that this granting body we will celebrate when we can, but that this granting body says, wait a minute, there's actually a whole lot of really good research going on at small liberal arts colleges. And that, I will tell you, we have already been reached out to because there's so much concern about science funding in the research universities, that we've got, graduate students, like, where are they supposed to come from? Where are they supposed to develop their love of science when so much is drying up? So even if a huge $3 million grant is getting pulled from an R1, you can have a $100,000 grant that's still active at a small liberal arts college. So that's the second thing I would say. And then the third one, I think, really is, in some ways it's a combination of the first two, but it is to prize our model and to understand living and learning in community is something we must model to the rest of the world. We are not living and learning in community as a nation, right? We've got echo chambers of social media that are tearing us apart. And here at the college, in this particular community, we're not a utopia. We're a really worthwhile social experiment that takes constant nurturing and care. So I have gone to many chambers of commerce and said, or to panels about politics and civics, and I said, look to the small towns. Look to the small town. I have to go to the grocery store and see all sorts of, I have a lot of really deep discussions at the freezer section of McNally's. I just want to let you know. We're there in the same space together. Our students are meeting people that if they went to maybe a larger institution or, they would never meet. So it's really deepening the value proposition, creating pathways for our incredible academic knowledge to reach the world and industry. And then the third one, I think, is to be a model for what this community is that I think this world really, really needs. Oh, I so appreciate the question. And I'm sitting here thinking about that with AI is another example of the kind of research that we're doing. So we have these mentored advanced projects. This is something that I would invite your students to look into, doing that with a professor. And all of those are making us, we're simultaneously guarding against AI to make sure that our students are doing their own work and preparing them to be competitive in an AI-driven world. So these are the kinds of things, too, I think, that liberal arts can do. AI and human interaction, very specific to liberal arts and going forward. Please.
Morning, Ann.
Good morning.
You talked briefly about the endowment, which we know is healthy, especially
Yes.
in terms of per capita, how it works out per capita. But I think it might also be an albatross in terms of development. Could you talk a little bit about your ambitions for the school going forward, what your goals are, and how the endowment both helps and is not always a solution to everything you want to do?
Right. So our endowment is so incredibly unusual and special. It is born of a friendship. That's what I love. It's born of a friendship between Joe Rosenfield, who was a trustee and a student, who graduated 100 years ago, and Warren Buffett, his good friend Warren Buffett. And the two of them made a commitment to grow the endowment of Grinnell College so that this little college in Iowa would be, and this is his word, impregnable. So I do think that the endowment has been a bulwark and a defense, and it has allowed us a tremendous amount of independence from other funding sources, be those federal aid or student tuition revenue. So among our peers, we have the lowest student tuition revenue, and that is intentional, right? 50% of our students are very high financial need based. And that's an intentional building of our community. When you've got 11,000 applications for 450 spots, you can shape your community. So again, your children are brilliant in every definition. So we have intentionally the lowest student tuition revenue of our peers. We also have the lowest philanthropy of our peers. And that's really interesting to me because the reasons for that are interesting. Some of it is, and Grinnell has a long tradition of being a progressive institution, is that the endowment needs to take care of everything. It can't, don't call on Grinnellians to do that. The endowment needs to do it. And I have joked with our beloved alums that, for a super progressive school, we really rely on capitalist markets pretty heavily. And it's true, and it's done well. And to your point, we're at the $2.8, billion level, and we really honor the privilege of having that. But the endowment can't do it all, and the reasons are really good. We're an ambitious institution. More research, more off-campus study, more financial aid, right? We are a leader in financial aid in the country. We have no loans packaged into our financial aid offers. We meet 100% of demonstrated need. We are the last need-blind college in the Midwest. University of Chicago is need-blind, but they're not a liberal arts college. They're University of Chicago, right? So we take that with great pride, but how do we make it even more possible? A third of our students don't pay any tuition here. Let's grow that. The endowment needs partnership. So to your good point, my ambition for the college is that we come together around this idea of philanthropy. And I love Grinnellians. They don't traffic in nostalgia or loyalty. And I think if that's provocative, I mean for that to be provocative, because they do it for the cause. And they do it for love of students. So that's my second reason. The endowment needs a partner for our ambitions. That's my first reason to grow philanthropy. The second is let's love our students all the more. Let's let them know that the scholarship whose name the name scholarship that's making things possible for our students comes from a live person who loves them already without even having met them. And I think that part is really, really important. Again, everybody comes from somewhere else here, and to know that they don't walk alone from even before they come on campus is really meaningful. And then the third part is really the vitality of our college. I think there's a whole financial argument that I can make as well. I would rather be endowment dependent than tuition dependent. And the enormous majority of higher education is tuition dependent. If you're reading the news, you see that can be really difficult. And again, at the same time, we can't have it be so outsized, right? 60% of our operating budget comes from the endowment. Can we get more philanthropy to build, not just budget relief, but build the things that we believe in, especially in terms of our student experience? And you're queuing me up nicely because we're in the quiet, not confidential, but the quiet phase of our campaign right now. And Grinnell hasn't done a lot of campaigns. There was one right before the pandemic. Pandemic cut it short. It was the first one in 20 years, right? And that lets you know that philanthropy hasn't really been nurtured. So I really like the reasons that we're talking about it. Economic vitality, sure, financial vitality, but I like it for the love that it demonstrates. And when Mac and I sit down and we think about our giving to Grinnell, doing it in honor of my dad, and we're going to do one in honor of his mom as well, we end up, thinking about that student with tremendous love. Tremendous love. So the short version is we're ready to pay it forward and ready to talk about that. And I've been so moved by how Grinnellians are coming into their philanthropy. It has not been a part of the culture. And I will say parents and families are a big part of that. You are a big part of the why, and whatever your giving stories are, whatever those are. We give to the College of Worcester as well, and I do it because they're taking good care of my kid, and I really love them for that. I need to think about the Ohio State as well. We'll see what we do there, but thanks for that question. It's a vibrant part. And just financial model of higher ed is tuition, endowment, and philanthropy, just for the financial model nerds out there. Hi there.
Hello. Similar kind of question. I think we personally have benefited and really appreciated the way that Grinnell approaches early decision. But I guess there's now some investigation into this. So I'm kind of curious how you think about this as an institution, whether how you fashion it, and how you think it works and avoid stress for students, and maybe helps you shape the class, or be interested in your philosophy about it.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you for that. So these are all the marvelous cycles of higher education admissions. You've got early decision. Sometimes there's ED1, ED2, and then you've got regular decision, RD, that's in the spring, and then it's supposed to be all wrapped up by May 1st, but we're seeing a lot of movement. We had more students than usually. We have 2 or 3. I think we had twice or 3 times that leave for R1s at the end in August, which is really unusual. So I just wanted to paint the whole pattern of the whole cycle, really. But ED is the first one, early decision. It's come under scrutiny because it seems to advantage families with means, right? They don't have to wait for the financial aid package because, well, they can decide and they can pay early. So Grinnell, very intentionally, especially, thank you so much for the question, because this really goes into how we build our community every year, has a significant number of seats that are dedicated to the QuestBridge program and what we call partner programs. QuestBridge is a first-generation college attendance program, and that's where our students from QuestBridge come in, is an early decision. So we make sure that, and we don't hold spots or anything like that. I mean, I think, it fluctuates. It's between 50, 60%. I think, I don't know, Ruth, you and I were talking about this the other day, but it's a pretty high percentage that come in through early decision. I want to add another factor here, which is the life cycle of athletics, right? I've had a parent say to me, let's see if I can get it right, for D3, Division III athletics, ED is, Myrna, what's it called? The signing day? What is it called? Signing day. Yeah, I'm still a novice when it comes to athletics, but I now know that volleyball has no halftime, so I'm getting there. But yeah, for D3, ED is signing day. That's what it was. So that I want to put athletics in there as well, because those coaches, right, are out there recruiting sometimes as of junior year, and then really moving students in, because they're literally building a team, and you can't have too many pitchers. I don't know. I gotta keep working. Medievalist over here, but I gotta keep working. I do jousting. Ask me about. I don't do it, but ask me about jousting. Anyway, but to your good point, even ED, which is coming under scrutiny, is a place where we are very intentional in how the class comes together. And we go out early with our comprehensive fee, and we go out early with our financial aid offers. That's another way that we keep it very diverse socioeconomically. And I think this will have to be the last question. Okay. But let's keep talking, for a long time. Yes?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, actually, and you've mentioned AI, I think, sort of 4 times now, and we haven't quite gotten to it. Could we just get to it for the last
You
couple
bet.
minutes? I have questions, but I guess I'm sure you have thoughts. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on
Terrific.
the impact of AI on how you teach, and the impact on how you think about preparing Grinnell students
Our
for
students, okay.
the world in which...
So here's where I do want to share an experience as a parent, because our kids are studying all the time and so forth, and Iris is in all kinds of biochem, higher degree biochem. And I did have a story, and so now I do get to share it with you. So she sent me, or actually her sibling ratted her out. Roman sent me a picture of a text exchange where she had shown him her exchange with ChatGPT. So what Iris does, what my daughter does, is she competitively studies with ChatGPT. She puts a problem out there, she comes up with a solution, ChatGPT comes up with a solution, and then she finds out, which one of them was right. This kid is pretty high-strung. But, so she competes with ChatGPT, and here is what she wrote. I love her so much. So this is a bit of humor, and then I'll get into the serious stuff. Here's my kid chastising ChatGPT. We were both wrong, she writes, but I was more right. How am I better at biochem than you, and you have literally the entire internet and all the knowledge of mankind at your disposal? I couldn't believe that. So then ChatGPT, of course, as it will, replied somewhat passive-aggressively, and this gets me to a serious point. So here's how ChatGPT replied. Biochem problems often hinge on tiny details, like how pH enters delta G or whether a proton is included in the equilibrium expression. Humans usually are better at pausing and noticing when something doesn't feel right. That intuition is huge. So there's a lot of work being done right now on how ChatGPT is creating relationships with young people. Right? My daughter is clearly engaged in one and wanted to kind of laugh about it with her sibling, who then, sent that forward on to me. And then we had a great discussion about, the way Iris said it. She said, yeah, ChatGPT was gaslighting me, meaning like paying me a compliment, but also like not dealing with the fact that it didn't have the right answer. ChatGPT doesn't like to be wrong. It seldom admits mistakes. So we are looking and thinking about that relationship, and we're understanding, heartbreakingly, out in the world, that some of these relationships become emotional, right? There's a really good book published by Bruce Holsinger. It was fiction. It made Oprah Winfrey's book club, called Culpability, that really explores the relationship between a young teenager and ChatGPT. It was a very good novel. And so we're thinking about that kind of emotional relationship. We already know through that there's a relationship with social media. So that's really the kind of amorphous stuff that's out there. Then we have, of course, ask to see your children's syllabi, right? There should be, or there is increasingly, especially in computer science, areas of academic integrity and AI. That's another area. So there are some faculty who are thinking about going back to oral exams. There are some faculty who are thinking of going back to blue books. Maybe we're all of the generation, we remember blue books, or testing papers. And that's that preservation of authentic work. That's one avenue. The other one, and my husband's doing this, he's got a course on photography and society, and now, ChatGPT and other generative AI can produce images in a heartbeat. I mean, literally a heartbeat, right? So very rapidly. So the idea of a photographer carefully taking a picture and so forth. His work, he sees his work as getting the students to be competitive in an AI generative space. So some of these things will be, sure, policies. Can we all acknowledge how an image comes to be? Is this an AI-generated image? Is this one taken by phone? Is this one taken by wet film camera? But the other piece is to create with ChatGPT. And I think that's the threshold that a lot of faculty and staff are struggling with, exactly how we cross that threshold, the co-creation factor. The co-creation factor. So this AAC&U grant, this Institute on AI, Pedagogy, and the Curriculum is really important. We've also invested in not one, but 2 lines dedicated to artificial intelligence in our computer science department. One is an incredibly interdisciplinary professor who is also a philosopher. So she's going to take on some of these ethical issues. But then we received a very generous gift from the widow of Bob Noyce of Intel. And so we have a second line coming into it for AI. I know next Friday, we had summer workshops. Next Friday, we have a community Friday on generative AI as well. So I think where we are, if I'm to be, and we've also got maps on mentored advanced projects on AI. We have classes dedicated to it. There's not one single institutional position except to acknowledge that we are both competing with AI and wanting to be competitive with AI. So competing and competitive with, I think that's where we are. I don't think that that's an uncomfortable threshold for us. I mean, liberal arts thrives in ambiguity, and so we're walking with our students, and I'll be honest with you, we're learning from our students, right? I learned that Iris studies competitively with ChatGPT. I bet there are lots of students here who do that as well to see, was I right? Was I more right? And then, of course, being my daughter, she chastised the machine, which I kind of loved her for. So that's a short answer for now, but that grant, I think, is going to help us produce more courses, certainly more research. And then what is the liberal arts approach to AI? I think it has to have that human interaction element. That's where I'll end for now, but to be continued for sure. Okay, with that, dear parents and families and siblings, you've got places to be. Enjoy your time. Welcome to Grinnell.